Sometimes you get it right the first time, but while Carnell Tate is the best value pick for the Washington Commanders at receiver, he is not the best all-around fit on our big board.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I am your host, your guy on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders, David Harrison. And on today's episode, how it is that Carnell Tate, Makai Lemon, and Jordan Tyson are three of the most talked about receiver targets for the Washington Commanders, despite not being the number one fit for the team at the position, and where each of them comes in, since it's not number one. But first, why Adam Peters may be about to draft another brother of one of his former 49ers players. We are here. Number one on the list, Bryce Lane, North Dakota State, FCS, third round projection, number one on the big board. I'll get into the difference between big board and draft round projections, all that stuff, because it's very important as we get through this series again this offseason. Number two, Makai Lemon out of USC. Third is Carnell Tate out of Ohio State. Fourth, Dejon Stribling, Ole Miss. Fifth, Zachariah Branch out of Georgia. Sixth, Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M. Seventh, Denzel Boston out of Washington. Eighth, Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. Ninth, Xavion Thomas out of LSU. 10th, Omar Cooper out of Indiana, the national champion, rounding out our top 10. And of course, we got verification, or got information, I should say, that Omar Cooper, rather, visiting the Washington Commanders as one of their top 30 visits. I'll tell you right now, don't read too much into that. Don't say, oh, they must like him. Oh man, they're really thinking about trading back. Just take the information. Don't try to connect any dots with it, because it can mean a lot of different things. So I just would not read too much into it. Some receivers that are not on the top 10, but certainly came very, very close to making that top 10. Honorable mentions, as you will, Chris Brazzell, Chris Bell, and Antonio Williams. Very, very close to making that top 10. Again, it's a very good wide receiver group. So I think that, so last year we did this series, and the thing that I can kind of pat myself on the back on, if I really want to, is that every player that was drafted by the Washington Commanders was in our top 10, which, certainly I think there's a level of patting yourself on the back. It's just confirmation that you feel good, that you know what this team is doing. I will be honest with you, with the variation in the receiving groups within the subsets within this receiver group, narrowing it down to 10 was very hard. Not super confident that I would, if you tell me that someone outside of the top 10 gets drafted, I'm not going to be surprised. I'll just be completely honest with you. There's several players, especially on day 3, that certainly have a fit for the Washington Commanders. But these are the top 10. A few honorable mentions there as well. So let's get to our number one guy. Let's get to Bryce Lane, North Dakota State, FCS. Only one game against an FBS team. And truth be told, he's got some consistency issues. He's got some pass catching consistency issues, which is one of the reasons that he's got such an impressive resume. But he is a third round projection. If you checked out Dane Brugler's The Beast, which just came out this week, I read it every single year. I love it. I start diving into stuff. Bryce Lane to Dane Brugler is a third to fourth round projection. So late third round, early fourth round projection, and some of those inconsistencies. But when you look at the traits, you look at the tools, and this is what we build the big board off of. Understand this: big boards are not a mock draft guide. All right, now we're going to use them as a guide for the mock draft in a way, but they're not a guide as in take this guy in the first round, right? Like Bryce Lane, number one receiver. So if we want to take a receiver in the first round, we're taking Bryce Lane. No, that's not what that means. What this means is when you break it down to traits, the traits are the fit for the team, for the scheme, what it is you're looking for within your offense or within your defense. What Bryce Lane being number one on this big board means is that he is the guy that checks the most blocks on those traits. Now, the performance, the tape, the medicals, the personality, the interviews, all of those things take huge importance in this process. So don't mistake Bryce Lance being number one on the big board for being like the first receiver that I think the Commanders should take. If they were to take, one in every round, that he should be the first one they take, because that's not the case. We'll get into that here in just a little bit as well. But Bryce Lane was our number one vertical Z receiver when it came to trade comparisons. Our number 9 X receiver, our third best value at the X receiver position in the X receiver group. Like I said, he's a third round grade, 6'3", 204 pounds, ran a 4.34 40 at 6'3", 204 pounds. You want to talk about traits? You want to talk about measurements? 6'3" dude, 204 pounds, moving 4.3 40. That's fast. 1.49 10-yard split. That's fast. 9.98 overall RAS. Very, very high score for Bryce Lane. Now, what he does. He provides pure speed to help clear out that deep third of the field, and he forces defenses to constantly play those two high safety shells, which does a few things. One, it opens up room in the middle for a guy like Chigakonkwo, your move tight end. It opens things up underneath for your power slot like Luke McCaffrey, and it ensures that the defense can't commit a whole lot of resources or too many resources to a guy like Terry McLaurin. If you're going to put a guy underneath and a guy above a receiver like Bryce Lance, wow, I don't know why I keep calling him Bryce Lance, then you can't then put like three dudes on Terry McLaurin because you're just going to have wide open receivers all over the field outside of that, and makes the defense play more honest, so to speak, right? He's got great ability to track the football, high points, deep passes, using his body to box out defenders in the process. 61% contested catch rate in college, despite the fact that he does have some consistency issues. Has the potential to grow into a future X with natural length. Now, again, he's talking about like a late third round pick here, so I don't want to get too crazy and say like this year he could become an X or next year he could just replace Terry McLaurin. You're talking like, 2-year, 3-year development, certainly with him to try to get to that level. Target range in the NFL draft right now, you're looking at taking him around that 71st overall pick if you're the Washington Commanders. We'll get into values here later on in this episode. Number 2 player on our top 10, our big board for the wide receivers, Makai Lemon out of USC. And I know there's a lot of Commanders fans that are fans of this kid, but really want him to come to Washington. And I'm just going to be honest with you, I have not mocked him to Washington, not one time. And it's not because I don't like him. Honestly, it's just because of the position where he's expected to get drafted. It's kind of in that position, that range where we just haven't really been with the Washington Commanders in these mock drafts. Now, that could all change, of course, starting this week. As we get these big boards put together, it's going to start to influence how we execute these mock drafts coming forward. So Makai Lemon was our number 1 power slot. He is a first-round grade, 5'11", 192 pounds, 4.53 40. No RAS score because he didn't do enough physical stuff in his evaluations to get a RAS score, but he's got some athleticism, right? Expert void finder against zone coverage at USC, displays high IQ spatial awareness on a consistent basis, 0 drops against man coverage in 2025. So he's good against zone, tough enough to make plays against man. He adds the ability as well, to contribute as a motion gadget role with a returner background as an additional kind of kicker. If we're talking like poker hands here, I'm not saying he's a kicker, though that would be kind of cool, but certainly brings a lot to the table. Again, versatility is going to play a big part in this whole thing. Bryce Lance, I'll get that right. Bryce Lance can do the vertical Z, start off as a Z, project to develop as a potential X. That's one of the reasons he hits so high on this list. Makai Lemon, the obvious fit is that power slot, but he can do some things as a gadget receiver, can do some things on special teams as well, which gives him a little bit of bump up this list. Your target range for taking him, again, is that number 7 pick. Again, not saying you should take him at number 7, but that is the range that he's sitting at if you're considering him for Washington. We'll get to that whole explanation here in just a little bit. We're going to hit our top 3 here before we move on to our next part of this conversation. Carnell Tate, Ohio State wide receiver, and this is where I think some people are going to be a little bit surprised. How is he not the number 1 guy or the number 2 guy, something like that? He came in as our number 4 X receiver, number 1 X receiver value. He's out of first-round grade, 6'2", 192 pounds, ran a 4.53 40, 1.6 110-yard split, 31 3/4-inch arms. No RAS score because he didn't do enough physical things to get a RAS score. Has a 69% career contested catch rate. So you go back to Lance, 61%. You got Carnell Tate, 69%. 85.7% contested catch rate in 2025 alone. That is ridiculous. 66 targets in 2025, 0 drops from Carnell Tate. Not a burner, but he does show the ability to function as a Z receiver. He played that position at Ohio State, by the way. 9 catches of 40 or more yards in 2025, despite his lack of top-end speed. You're looking at taking him around that number 7 overall pick, which is why his value goes on, because right now he's, according to the majority of mock drafts, according to mockdraftdatabase.com, he is about the 8th player coming off the board in most. So that's why you see Carnell Tate with the first-round projection, because you have the consistency in catches, the 0 drops, all those things, but he doesn't fit all the traits. He's not quite as tall as you would want that future X to be. He's not quite as fast as you would want your lid lifting Z to be, those types of things. That's why the traits hit Bryce Lance higher up on the big board. But Carnell Tate comes down on the big board, but he's higher up in the draft position because of the proven ability. And of course, you do have the ceiling. I do believe that he would basically become your future X receiver, replacing Terry McLaurin if and when the time comes. That's 3 of our 10. We're 30% of the way down. 70% we'll do in the next set of names. And then we'll get to values. We'll get to what it means as we look ahead to the NFL draft. All of that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you in part by Indeed sponsored jobs. With workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, you still have the position that you need to fill sitting open. The pressure is absolutely on. You're feeling it. And when you need help doing that, finding that person, you got to go to Indeed sponsored jobs, which helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for with the skills, the experience, and in the location you need them. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate just stumbles across your post. In the time that we've been talking, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed. That is according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job posting the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view today and every day. To the everydayers that come through for every single episode, I appreciate you coming through again for this episode. If you haven't already, checked out the Everydayer Club, ad-free episodes, newsletter, text message access to me. All you got to do is go to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to check that out today. Continuing now with our wide receiver big board, our first position group big board of the pre-draft season. Fourth receiver on the list is Dejon Stribling, and he is someone, Ole Miss receiver, who's become one of my favorites to watch during this process, to study during this process, and to learn about during this process. Our number 4 vertical Z receiver, our number 2 vertical Z value receiver, and our number 7 X receiver. So again, that versatility showing up there. He does have a 4th round grade, so he's a day 3 guy, 6'2", 207 pounds, 4.36 40, 1.53 second 10-yard split, 9.88 RAS score. Very good RAS score. He is a legitimate lid lifter. He's got height, build, and speed, a rare combination for a wide receiver. He's a hands catcher who catches the ball away from his body, and his frame shows great ability, and he shows great ability to track the ball downfield, has the frame and the drive to also be a physical boundary X receiver in the future. He does need more reps. He does need more proven ability and education how to win those contested catches, but he does show that potential down the road. He is, like I said, a 4th round projection, which means that if you're the Washington Commanders, you're kind of looking at the potential of using that 71st overall pick if you want to go out there and nab him. 5th on our list, Zachariah Branch out of Georgia, number 1 motion gadget receiver on our list, number 9 vertical Z receiver on our list. And number 9 really because he's 5'9", so he doesn't fit the physical profile of a 6'1" type of dude out there. 175 pounds. He is a 2nd round projection. Zero data in the shuttle, but a 4.3 5.40. So you know he's got that speed, which makes him a candidate for that Z position. 1.5 second 10-yard split, 9.12 RAS score. He's got that spark plug ability, right? That just electric ability, former track star. He's got suddenness. He's got breakaway ability. More than 75% of his career receiving yards came as yak. So he's a guy that you want to get the ball to in space, let him work. Less power for the slot, but he does have slot abilities, that good awareness in the zone to find holes against those zone coverages. And again, he is a projected 1st round or 2nd round draft pick, but early enough. Obviously, the Commanders don't have a 2nd round pick. So the range is number 7, just meaning that he's going to be there at number 7, but he's going to be gone before the next pick, which is number 71. A lot of these receivers are going to be in that range. We'll talk about what that means here in just a little bit. Number 6, KC Concepcion out of Texas A&M. Our number 2 power slot in our list. Our number 3 motion gadget guy. So that versatility, again, showing up. 1st round grade on KC Concepcion. 6 foot tall, 196 pounds, 4.46 40. So not the fastest dude in the world, but certainly not slow. No RAS score because he didn't do enough physical activity in the pre-draft process to get a RAS score. Elite quickness, elite acceleration, wins underneath easily with slants and drags. 66.7% contested catch rate, despite being relatively undersized for his position. His athleticism allows him to be used in the slot or as a motion gadget receiver and in the return game. So again, a guy who can do 3 different things. Again, he's a late 1st round projection, which means number 7 is his target range if you're the Washington Commanders. 7th receiver on this list, Denzel Boston out of Washington. Our number 1 X receiver. And I mentioned this in that X receiver conversation, that just because you're the number one X receiver doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be super high on our big list because of the lack potential of versatility. Denzel Boston is a prime example for this. He's the number one X receiver. He is a first round grade, but that's about it. 6'4", 212 pounds, 32-inch arms, prototypical build for an X receiver, 61% career contested catch rate. You love that. Catches the ball away from his frame, has an incredibly low 3.1% drop rate, but he is a strict X only. Listen, if he turns out to be like the greatest X in your franchise history, who cares, right? But when we talk about big boards, talking about what can you bring to the team, versatility is a big thing for the team. We hear it time in and time out when you talk to these evaluators, you talk to these coaches. What I like about him in this scenario, if the Washington Commanders were to go this way, again, the target range is number 7 because he's going to be there at number 7. He's not going to be there at number 71. But clearly, if you're looking at Denzel Boston, you're talking about trading back from number 7 to go out there and get him. You take him, he's going to free up Terry McLaurin. Like, he's projects as a year 1 X receiver. So he's going to free up Terry McLaurin to move into the slot more, to move him into the Z. Certainly you can have him in the X, Terry McLaurin in the X, and you can have Denzel maybe off the field or doing something else if you really want to try it there, if you unlock something in him that we just haven't seen yet, which is certainly possible. But he's going to be that immediate X receiver. You move Terry around a little bit and you say, you know what, guys, we'll figure out the Z next year. If this year, Diami, you hold that down, Ben Jefferson will give you a chance as well. Maybe we'll go get a guy as an undrafted free agent because there's going to be some interesting options available as UDFAs as well. So Denzel Boston comes in number 7. Coming in number 8, Jordan Tyson, Arizona State, my Sun Devil. And if you were ever going to accuse me of being biased, this right here, my friend, is where I'm going to point to tell you that I am not biased, because he is our number 8 receiver. He was our number 8 X receiver. First round grade on this kid. He's expected to go in the first round. The rumor is that his medicals came back pretty clean during the pre-draft process. If that's true, then I think he's a lock for a first round pick. 6'2", 203 pounds. Hurts him as an X projection because he's just not as big, not as long. 30.25-inch arms. Like I said, not as long, but he does play bigger than his measurements. And he matched DK Metcalf's NFL scouting combine record on the bench press. So showing a lot of upper body strength there. Great high point ability, strong hands to snatch deep passes away from his body. I think he's a sleeper power slot role, to be quite honest with you. I actually saw a comment about this on the YouTube channel not that long ago, and I was like, okay, I thought I was being a little bit unique, but apparently I'm not being unique when I say that I think Jordan Tyson's kind of a sleeper for that power slot role. And if the Commanders see it that way, then it adds a little bit of flavor of versatility, maybe jumps him up their board just a little bit. He's a little bit twitchier than he appears at first glance, and he's a very willing blocker as well. Does have that extensive injury history, though. So that is going to be a question. Number 9 on our board, Xavier Thomas, LSU receiver. Number 3 on our vertical Z list. Number 4 on our motion gadget list. 5'10", 190 pounds. 4.28 40, 4.28 40, 4.45 shuttle time, 1.52 10-yard split time, 5.01 RAS. Why? Because of the measurements. 5'10", 190 pounds. He is undersized, but he's got world-class speed. So again, another guy that can ensure that you play 2 high shells on the defensive side. Explosive on top of fast, right? So he's not just quick, he's also fast. 1.52 10-yard split, sub 4.3 40-yard dash. Also fits as a motion gadget receiver and was an SEC leading kick returner with high marks for work ethic and leadership. He is a projected UDFA right now. Personally, if you want him, I'd take him at 223. I'd take him in the 7th round. I'd take that flyer. I don't let him hit the undrafted free agent market. Even if I think we have a handshake deal, I just pull the trigger on a draft pick. Finally, wrapping it up, Omar Cooper out of Indiana. Another first-round grade, but he's the 10th guy on our list. Number 8 motion gadget guy. Number 1 motion gadget value. And really part of the reason he drops down the list is we just don't view the motion gadget receiver, the Khalif Raymond role, so to speak, as being all that important for the Washington Commanders this year, and not as important as a future Z, as a future X going into 2027 and beyond. So that certainly hurts his rankings on this list. Doesn't mean I don't love the guy as a prospect in a vacuum. It just means that as the fit goes for what this team needs, best player available and team needs, believe it or not, they marry. They're a Venn diagram. They're not separate circles at all. 6 foot tall, 199 pounds, 4.42 40, 9.15 overall RAS. He's got elite run after catch ability, has been compared to Deebo Samuel. I've already gotten some questions. If the Washington Commanders want a Deebo Samuel guy, why wouldn't they just keep Deebo Samuel instead of drafting a guy? For starters, he's cheaper. For starters, he's younger. For starters, you don't have the injury history and all the other things. You can kind of start fresh with him, but I get your point. I'm not necessarily arguing with you. I'm just kind of pointing out some things of why a team might do that. Create space. Hard to break down. Showcases top shelf contact balance. Omar Cooper does, and elusiveness. Forced 27 missed tackles in 2025 alone. Presents a strong fit as a power slot, having played 83.3% of his snaps in 2025 from the inside, and he's a decent fit as an undersized X receiver with experience to support rotational use. First round grade means that you're looking at using him at number 7, which brings us to, if these are our top 10 names, what does it mean for the NFL draft? We're diving into all of that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you in part by TurboTax. It's getting to mid-April. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is just a lot. It's too much, to be quite honest with you. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if the person on the other end really even understands your situation. But this year, you get a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get those real-time notifications that give you the confidence and the comfort to go about your day. It's the relief of walking in, meeting a person in person, and walking out knowing that your taxes are being handled right. So head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks again for coming through, and thank you for also checking out my written work at WUSA9.com, covering your Washington Commanders over there. If you want all of this in a digestible, ready-to-read mode, well, you've actually got two choices, because All Access Everyday Air Club members, you're going to get a newsletter on this episode, and you can also go to WUSA9.com. It's not the exact same. It's not like you're not getting the same kind of breakdown, but there will also be an article on WUSA9.com posted this weekend after I published this episode. So our top draft window, what it looks like, top 10 guys on this list. And if you look at it, 7 players of this top 10, 7 guys on this top 10 for the receiver group for the Washington Commanders are going to be off the board before the Commanders make their second pick, which means if you want one of these top 10 guys, basically you got about a 70% chance of getting one at number 7. Makai Lemon is going to come off the board before the Commanders' second pick. So is Carnell Tate. So is Zachariah Branch. So is KC Concepcion. So is Denzel Boston. So is Jordan Tyson. So is Omar Cooper. By the time number 71 comes around, you're only going to have 3 of your top 10 wide receivers left on the board. If the Commanders' real-life big board matches this one, which I'm not saying it does, but if it does, you're only going to have 3 of your top 10 left when number 71 rolls around. Bryce Lance, projected, and DeJon Stribling, he's more likely. Number 223, only one of these guys will be left on the board, Xavier Thomas. And that's where, if you haven't drafted a receiver by the time 223 comes around, you need, honestly, 209 comes around, you might pull the trigger on Xavier Thomas and not roll the dice any further. Get one of those receivers under your belt. Now, as far as value is concerned, here's the way we do this, right? The projected pick, so at number 7 versus the projected spot the wide receiver is scheduled to go. So Carnell Tate is scheduled to be the 8th pick right now, according to the aggregate mock draft database, which means that it's a -1 valuation. The Commanders pick at 7. They're picking the 8th player that's coming off the board. Therefore, it's a -1. Makai Lemon, -6. Jordan Tyson, -8, which means those 3 guys, when you're talking about comparing value, best player available, need, all that stuff, those 3 guys become your top 3 targets, which is how we get to, even though Bryce Lance is the number 1 most holistic fit, checks all the marks, the most marks, I should say, of this wide receiver group, Carnell Tate becomes the best value pick for the Washington Commanders. Makai Lemon, the 2nd. Jordan Tyson, the 3rd. How are we going to use this data for mock drafts? How are we going to use this data to kind of look at what could happen for the Washington Commanders? Well, it's kind of right in front of you right there, right? We talk about it. Makai Lemon. If you want Makai Lemon, so let's say Carnell Tate comes off the board to Cleveland Browns at number 6. That rumor, that speculation is certainly gaining steam. So let's say Carnell Tate comes off the board. Well, your second best value is Makai Lemon at -6. So if you're moving back 6 spots, that's 13 with the Los Angeles Rams. So you trade back with the Los Angeles Rams. They move up. I don't know who they're taking in that scenario. We'll get there when we get to mock draft Monday. You move back to 13 thinking, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get me Makai Lemon. Now, do you want to trade back to 13 or do you want to trade back, to like 10 or 11, a little bit short of that? Certainly you're going to have that -2 in the value block or something like that. But You get to right on the button, that's where you end up getting jumped, or that's when somebody that maybe you didn't expect to take him maybe isn't taking. You look at the Miami Dolphins, they just traded Jalen Waddle. They got pick 11, they got pick 30. I don't know that they don't pull the trigger on Makai Lemon if he's sitting there at 11. So you trade back with the Bengals at number 10. The Bengals come up, feasibly go defense. The New Orleans Saints, maybe they go wide receiver, but maybe they go Jordan Tyson, or maybe you like Jordan Tyson and Makai Lemon both, and both those guys are decent value there at number 11 or number 10 rather. So you go either of those directions. Anyway, that's just one way you can kind of impact these things. But so too, there's our other position group valuations, like the cornerback position, because this is our final wide receiver big board for the 2026 NFL draft with the Commanders focus. But the good news is, if one of your favorite guys isn't on the list, let's say it's Jeff Caldwell, because Jeff Caldwell at Cincinnati is one of my favorite guys, and he didn't make the top 10. So just keeping it real here, not my favorites, just making it on the list here. Certainly could still see him go. Certainly could see some of these other guys go, because like I said, this is a very deep class of wide receivers, which is why we started there. Our next group, also pretty deep, not as deep, but we're going to talk cornerbacks. I think it's kind of the second biggest need for this Washington Commanders team right now. So we're going to hit cornerbacks next, and then their evaluations, their potential draft spots, and their value marks and all those things certainly going to impact the way we view mock drafts moving forward. So I appreciate you coming through for that episode. Coming up next, I appreciate you coming through for this episode and any other future episodes. And in the meantime, in between time, if you need me, you can find me on X at DHarrison82, on Instagram at DHarrison_82, or just text me by becoming an all access tier member of the Everydayer Club. LockedOnCommanders.supercast.com to do that today. To the Everydayers, those of you who come through for every single episode, I greatly appreciate you coming through for this one yet again. And to everybody out there, thank you for coming through for this episode. Until we see each other again, please, if you're out and about, be safe, be kind. We will talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.